Hello everyone, it's Silvia from Fairlight Tarot. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to have a look at a very exciting VR. It's I'm gonna call it my way because it's actually more of a VR inspired video. I'm going to show you some decks that I think are indicative for seasonal changes. So this video has been inspired by a VR inspired video by Robin at Robin's Reflection, and Robin herself had been inspired to make that video by watching other videos as well. So it's been a little bit of a continuous movement of watching this video because it was linked into the other video and I'll make sure to post all of the videos in the description box below, so if you want to have a look at them, you're welcome to, of course. My version is the Southern Hemisphere, in specific, those decks that will help you transition from the darkness and the unseasonably cold winter we've just had until probably a couple of days ago, into the surprisingly hot spring / summer, oh my goodness, are we already there, that is happening right now. So Australia is very unique. We don't really have a seasonality per se. We have, you know, either a mild or coldish kind of winter, and then we're thrown immediately into the heat of summer. We don't necessarily have transaction seasons, so the spring and the autumn you're used to in the northern hemisphere, or I was used to in the northern hemisphere, for example. They're just not there. And one thing that you notice, for example, is that there are no deciduous trees. So, you know, the really beautiful red, orange and yellow colors that you see on the leaves in autumn in the northern hemisphere, you don't find them in Australia because we literally go from evergreen to no leaves at all. So there is one which is actually called Fagus, and it is in Tasmania. I filmed it when I was producing the photography show, and that was a very unique experience. But other than that, you know, we have gum trees, of course, the natives, and then we have other trees that literally do not turn. But let's have a look, because these decks, I feel that they really show you the struggle of a person that has lived most of their life in the northern hemisphere, and now living in Australia and having to deal with that transition, you know, that helps you go from one strong season to the next one. Let's have a look at what decks I've got for you today. Okay, so first I want to start with a combo between a tarot deck and an oracle deck. In specific, we've got the very airy and therefore to me wintry deck, which is tarot deck, which is the Balgowlah tarot. And then we've got, as an oracle deck, we have the Novice Witches Oracle, which is I think it's a very delicate, very interesting kind of deck that actually pairs up really well with the Balgowlah. Balgowlah for me has been a bit of a challenge to pair up with a deck, because the messages of this deck are just so very sharp and pungent and very straight to the point and very airy, you know, that kind of Queen of Swords kind of energy that in many cases it's kind of hurting you, but you kind of need to know whatever it is that the message is. Now let me try and zoom in so I can show you the cards properly. So this is, these two really speak of winter for me in Australia. So I'm not expecting everyone to be familiar with the seasons here, so I'm just going to explain. And for those of you who live in Australia, the first thing that I'm going to say is winter or seasons in general are not the same everywhere in Australia. Okay, so we've got very consistent differences between states, really. Australia is a federation, and so, you know, and it's a big country, it's a big island. So you go from the constant, let's say, what we call tropical far north Queensland, which is, as you can imagine, displaying a really tropical kind of weather. to the kind of coldish or continental climate you can find in Tasmania, which is another island in the south of Australia. So I live in Sydney. I live in the northern beaches, but not for long. We're actually going to move in the next few weeks. And that's the reason why these videos are becoming a bit of a challenge for me, because I don't have access to all of my decks, because I started packing early because I hate moving. So, you know, in the illusion that it will hurt less, I'm actually prolonging the exposure to the hurt, which makes sense, of course. It feels like I should really be using the Barbara Walker these days, just to, you know, just reckon with myself that I'm just hurting myself even more. But anyway, so we have in the northern, let's say in the northern beaches in this area, we have relatively mild kind of winters, and we used to have really, really hot summers. Now not anymore. It's getting towards a colder kind of climate. So for example, we're getting colder winters to the point that it's actually a bit of a challenge, you know, for the city of Sydney to take care of the homeless population. Unfortunately, there's a lot of associations that provide shelter in winter. They provide food and shelter for the homeless. Sydney has got a very high population of homeless people. There's a lot of housing affordability problems, but also when it comes to you know, rent, of course, is sky high. And that means, of course, that unfortunately you have a lot of people that cannot afford any kind of accommodation, and they take to the street, and in some cases it's actually a choice. I met a few of them because I used to provide, you know, whenever I had some food left, I always went to an association which was providing with food, homeless people with food and clothes, and so I always get in touch with these kind of associations whenever I can spare something. And I met with a lot of them, and I have to say, they're so lovely. I mean, one of them, you know, she's actually spending her nights close to where I live, and I always go there and say hi to her, and we have these amazing conversations. She's one of the smartest person I've ever met, and being homeless for her is a choice, but you know, there's a lot to say about that, and I don't want to turn political, of course, because how much of a choice is it when you don't have any other choice? I really do appreciate that she is actually really owning it, and because she is such a smart cookie. But because of so many problems here in Sydney in specific, and not necessarily in the rest of Australia, we do find a lot of people in this kind of situation. Now I keep on just flipping the cards. I hope you appreciate how really good these two pair up together. It's almost incredible. They share the same kind of color palette. They share the same kind of vibe and energy. Now the Novice Witches Oracle is all about, you know, it's divided in category. You've got witches, you've got witches familiar, you've got witches tool, let's say, and also notable, let's say, celebrities or personalities from the past. But the reason why I feel that these two actually pair up really well together is because the Barbara Walker is so wintry because of its airy kind of nature, that it could use a bit of a soften of the blow, you know, when delivering the message. And I do believe that the Witch's Oracle does exactly that. So it really helps you to soften the blow whenever you read the cards. So going back to winter in Sydney is like that. It's very mild, although it is becoming much cooler throughout the years. And summers are actually becoming a lot less oppressive, a lot less hot. We used to have, when I moved to Australia, that was 16, 17 years ago, I was used to, let's say, weeks on end with 40 plus degrees Celsius. Now we don't get that anymore. We get 35. At 35, we feel like it's, you know, newsworthy already. 40 is the one odd. It's really becoming the one odd, and I for one, I'm actually quite grateful for that, because I just melt. I tend to melt when it's, you know, 40 degrees is a lot. It's just terrible. So if you have weeks on end constantly over 40, it's really, really tough. But anyway, so these two, they have this kind of conversation between each other, and I really, really like that. It's something that it really takes you away from the spiky messages that the Barbara Walker is constantly delivering to you, as if they were slaps to the face. But because you got something to direct the focus on, you know, the center here, the central card, it's actually much easier to read with this. And not to talk about the fact that it's really interesting. So the Novice Witches Oracle deck actually comes with a guidebook. But what I've seen recently in Kinokuniya in Sydney, you can also purchase a much larger version, like a coffee table book kind of version of the guidebook, which is very, very nice because it's fully illustrated. It's got a little bit more information than the one you find in the guidebook. And I highly recommend it if you like this deck. So this was, to me, a deck that, or a combination of decks that really represents winter where I live in Australia. So a very airy kind of energy, but because we're used to a milder kind of winter than the one I was used to when, for example, I used to live in the Netherlands, and that was a very, very crispy kind of winter. In Australia, it's definitely milder. So you need something to soften the blow, and that's, you know, that's a task carried out by the Novice Witches Oracle. The next two deck we're going to have a look at are the Mind's Eye Tarot by Olivia Rose and the Valida Oracle. Now, I have to say though that this is supposed to be, when it comes to seasons, it's supposed to be still that kind of winter, but it's the tail end of the winter. So it's the kind of winter in which you start having those really lovely days in which the temperature is actually warmer than usual, and because there's no clouds, you know, you feel like the day's getting longer, so you can still take that walk down the beach perhaps at 5 or 6 p.m. Instead of, you know, having to move it forward at 3 p.m. And it feels like you feel it in the air. It's the kind of weather that makes you dream about summer. So it's almost as if summer was already in the air, or at least spring was in the air. Or even though I did say earlier that we don't necessarily have the spring season in Australia, or at least where I live. It's that kind of days in which you actually feel that longing, and I'm sure that you all know what that longing is about. So it's the kind of feeling you have no matter where you live. You can live in the northern hemisphere, you can live in the southern hemisphere, but whenever there's a turn of season, there is a longing for what's to come, what's next, something that, you know, when you're exiting from summer and going into winter, or going into fall and then winter, you kind of long for hot chocolate with cream or something like that, you know, or the pumpkin spice latte at Starbucks, for example, or, you know, the kind of feeling of having to cuddle up with your family around the table because it's getting colder and you want to wear jumpers. And because there's a lot of doing that during the winter, especially in the northern hemisphere, when you're exiting that and going into the warmer kind of months, you feel the opposite. So you still have a longing, but in this case is a longing for a summer dress and going down the beach and having a walk, or, you know, just lying on the beach and sunback. So it's really something that makes your heart sing. It makes your heart long for something that you don't necessarily have right now, but you know that it's going to come quickly. I have to say that this deck, the Mind's Eye Tarot, is that kind of deck. It's a deck of longing for me. It's a deck that either whether you're exiting summer and going towards winter, or exiting winter and going towards summer, it's actually the kind of deck you feel like using. So it is definitely, let's say, a transactional kind of deck. And depending on which oracle you pair it with, I feel that you can have either summery or wintry kind of vibes. And in this case, I really think that pairing it up with the Balgowlah Oracle gives me still that kind of wintry vibes. Perhaps because of the black background in both of the decks, perhaps because of, the simplicity of the oracle. I don't necessarily know what this is about, but it does have that kind of feel. And let's just zoom in so I can show you better. So this is a clear example of two decks that should not be working together, because one, it's very busy. So the Mind's Eye Tarot is a very busy deck. And if you're not familiar with the creator, is also the same creator as the Heart's Eye Oracle, and also the Mermaid's Purse Oracle. The Heart's Eye and the Mermaid's Purse are indie, whereas this deck, the Mind's Eye, is actually mass market, and it's a very affordable mass market too. And as you can probably guess, it's by US Games. So as I was saying, these two give me still that wintry kind of vibes, but they're going towards that sense of longing for a change in season, a seasonal change. I really love the way they pair up together. I think it's the Barbara Walker with the Novice Witches was a match made in heaven, because it really complemented both the decks. In this case, it's not necessarily that kind of one cannot live without the other kind of match. Because you can definitely feel how the Balgowlah stands on itself, and definitely the Mind's Eye is also a deck that you can use by itself without any kind of feeling like you're missing something. However, when you do pair them up together, it feels like it's the kind of combination, it's a match that it's a wanted kind of match. It's a voluntary one. You really feel like they took the decision to be together. And most of the time, whenever there's a conscious decision to be together, it actually makes for a really good match. So I really, really like the conversation that these two are having. And we're just right now, I'm filming on the Sunday. We're in that kind of period of time in Australia in which we come from last week temperatures of around 18 degrees during the day, and today is going to be 29 degrees during the day. When I talk about degrees, it's obviously a Celsius. So just to give you an idea, 29 it starts to be really hot, and you can definitely go around in your, well, if you live close to the beach like I do, you can definitely go and sunbake on the beach, because you're not going to catch cold at all. But then when the sun goes down, because it's still not summer, it gets really chilly really quickly. And if you're caught outdoors, wearing a bikini, whatever you wear on the beach, it's actually really, really cold. So it's that you're longing for it to be summer already, but on the other hand, you know that it's not summer yet. So you still have you have to train your mind to understand the difference of wanting something and but still understanding that you don't have it yet. I really love these two together. They really speak to each other. I can't stop, looking at the images and just looking at the fact that there's so many similarities, so many resonances between the elements in the Balgowlah Oracle and many elements of the tarot deck. Plus, let me say that the Balgowlah Oracle is really beautiful because it's very simple. But it still achieves these very aesthetic, very pleasing kind of aesthetics with very few symbols, very straight to the point symbology and, colors. And as I say, the fact that there's a lot of black background going on in both of the decks that really helps making the connections between the cards too. So the Mind's Eye Tarot and the Balgowlah Oracle. And these decks have been chosen because for me, this is the best way to represent that feeling of longing when you're at the tail end of one season and you know what's coming. And you feel like you're ready for that kind of change, but you don't have it yet. The next deck I'm going to show you is the Aboriginal Dreamtime Oracle, published by Rockpool. This is by Mel Brown. It's a really beautiful, really stunning, breathtaking, I would say, oracle. I'm actually going to show you the oracle on its own this time. These are the backs, really gorgeous. This is one of the older kind of decks from Rockpool, so as you can see, it really catches the light. Of course, now I can't catch the light because I don't know where it is. There you go. So, but it's hopefully one day they'll just reprint it and change it to the newer kind of cardstock, which is you know, semi-matte. But obviously, because being it glossy like that, you can see a lot better the colors. And this is a deck that is really stunning because it does have that kind of splash of very vibrant color in a kind of a muted kind of background, which is something that I really like. And as you can see, so I don't know whether you're familiar or not with Aboriginal artwork in Australia. This is a technique that is very popular, very, you can see it in, it's used by many artists. So these dots, there you go, and it's just really, really beautiful. If you live in Australia, you know what I'm talking about. If you come to Australia, I highly encourage you to check out the Aboriginal shops, because Aboriginal artwork is simply stunning. And you can kind of see a little bit in this deck, but there's so, there you go. This is more the typical, what you can, sorry about that, I keep on bumping the camera when I do that. So this is more the typical kind of artwork you can find in the, I'd say in the shops. Make sure that it's a shop that is actually owned by an Aboriginal. It's not always the case, although lately, thankfully, it is. It's getting better, let's say. So this artwork is just fantastic. I really love it. And when it comes to the oracle per se, I really like the keywords and the association with the images as well. So there's a lot going on in the cards, as you can tell, even though the art style is kept very simple, almost minimalist. But there is this continuation on the dotted lines, for example, between, you can tell, between the cards, like that, for example. What I really like as well, and I don't know whether it's clear, it's probably not clear on camera, but what I can tell you is that this in the background is actually a photo. So what happened here was there was a photo and then the artwork has been painted on top of it, which is a very, very beautiful, very interesting kind of technique. Maybe you can tell a little bit more by this one. So this here, these trees, for example, this is an actual photo, but then on top of it, this has been painted. There you go. So there's a lot of decks that you can pair up with this oracle. However, I just wanted it I wanted to show it to you by itself because it is that kind of really, really gorgeous deck. And this for me is, you know, it's a almost 100% transactional kind of deck. Why? Because when it comes to seasonal change, because it's one of those decks that first and foremost you can actually use it year round, so it doesn't have a very specific airy or watery or fiery kind of energy. It's one of those decks that is very versatile, so you can actually use it with a lot of tarot decks. And obviously when you look at tarot decks, you may have a more of a seasonal kind of energy coming from them, so you can pair it up with a very fiery kind of energy for summer, but you can also pair it up with the very airy kind of energy for winter. So it is a truly, let's say, transactional kind of deck when it comes to that kind of feeling you have when it's not winter anymore, but it's not summer anymore. So this is the Aboriginal Dreamtime Oracle by Mel Brown. The next two decks are going to be matched up together, and we are talking about the Rosebud Tarot, which is, this is the mass market edition. There used to be an indie edition with a linen cardstock, really, really beautiful and also different, and I believe better looking or more pleasing backs. And the When Olga Speaks Oracle. I really enjoy these two together, and just to I know I've said this a few times before, but I just want to repeat that because whenever, if you like this oracle, so this is called the When Olga Speaks Oracle. The artist, I can give you the handle on Instagram, is artygirlbelike, but I'll make sure to put it in the description box below. This copy, I purchased it from Make Playing Cards. Unfortunately, is not available in that website anymore because it was a limited run of 200 copies. However, the artist is definitely confirmed, it's definitely confirmed, not to me personally, but to others, that there will be a second attempt at a Kickstarter campaign later on in the year. So I'll definitely make sure to show you this deck and to talk about it, because I really believe that more than 200 people should have access to this deck. It's just absolutely fantastic. It's a digital collage, photographic, collage. And it's not just the images, very beautiful, but also the way in which they resonate with the keywords is just, it's the mark of a truly great deck. Let's have a look at how it works with the Rosebud Tarot, because the Rosebud Tarot shares the same kind of setup. So it also is a photographic collage deck. So these two, although, so as I said before, the Rosebud Tarot, let me just level them up. So as I said before, the Rosebud Tarot is this one. This edition is the mass market edition, is very affordable. But I've actually had the opportunity to have a look and actually feel the indie edition, and I'm definitely looking for the indie edition because it's a lot better. Mind you, this is personal. It's always, I always have to add at the end of this sentence, I always have to add, for me. It's obviously very subjective. You may prefer the mass market edition, and it's absolutely fine. And after all, whatever works for you, you need to use the deck that works the best, because you're the one that is interpreting the cards, and you're also the one that has the responsibility to translate the message back onto the person you're reading them for. So obviously, if the tactile feel of a deck works better than others, by all means go for it. It's just personally, I do prefer the tactile feel of the indie edition of the Rosebud. But the deck is the deck, the vibe of the deck don't change in this case, whether you have a linen finish or a, like this kind of matte, semi-matte kind of finish. Do you see the energy that is coming out of these two? It's just unbelievable. I really, really like the way they interact with each other. They talk to each other. They have this kind of, at times muted, at times screaming conversation. Depending on the keywords and the energy that comes out of the oracle deck. But they work together, they just work like a charm. And I really like that in many cases, even in the Rosebud Tarot, you've got a few elements of gray in the cards, which is actually the case also for the oracle deck. I couldn't ask for a better match, honestly. And I think that because in many cases we tend to believe that any kind of collage deck will match really well with any other kind of collage deck, that is not always the case, because I actually tried the When Olga Speaks with the one of the very first collage kind of decks, which is the Voyager Tarot. And it still works, but not as much, because I feel that so when the Rosebud Tarot, of course, is qualified and categorized as a collage deck because it is a photographic collage, on the other hand, you still have a central figure. You still have a focus in the center of the card, or whether it's not the center, but it does come clearly out. It stands out of the card, which is the same case as the Oracle. However, the decks like the Voyager Tarot and probably also the Telesma Tarot, They are collages, but they're very busy kind of collages. Also, I'm thinking the Ritual Tarot. This has got nothing to do with aesthetics or, you know, being effective as a deck or being beautiful as a deck. As a matter of fact, I really like the Ritual Tarot. But I do believe that being more busy than other collage deck actually determines whether one pair matches and one pair doesn't. So in this case, because we have this central focus in all of the cards, both in the Oracle and in the Tarot, it is really a match made in heaven. So why have I chosen these two? Well, first of all, we are transitioning from winter into summer. And as I said plenty of times already in this video, in Australia, when you live in Australia, especially if you live in the area where I live in the northern side of Sydney, you don't necessarily go through a transactional season. So you don't necessarily have spring after winter. You have coldish kind of winters, and then you're thrown into 29 degrees days. However, when we talk about the Rosebud Tarot, it actually fulfills that need of a transition for me. It gives me the possibility to focus on the fact that I've actually have to let go of the feelings that surround winter for me and have to start embracing the feelings that characterize summer. And that works like a charm. It's really, it's telling you, it's like a spring, the classical stereotypical spring deck. Also because obviously it's called this, the Rosebud Tarot, fair enough. But it's not just the name. I mean, it really is the vibe and the feeling of the deck. And as I said before, I really love it when there's a really good match, because it means that these two decks can actually give you a lot more when they are together, when they are read together, than when they are read as single decks. So the Rosebud Tarot and the When Olga Speaks Oracle. The next deck I'm going to show you is, to me, a deck that is really showing and vibing with spring energy, and it's the Jonasa Jaus. This is the Jumbo edition, as you can probably tell, too big for my hand. I absolutely love this deck, and I am so very grateful because now this deck can go for really hefty price tags. I was really lucky because I got it from a lady in one of my contacts in Minnesota, and she was happy to sell it to me for a very reasonable price, which is something that you don't necessarily encounter often on Facebook groups, for example. So I am so very grateful because I was looking for this edition. It's the artwork, Jonasa's artwork is simply stunning. And I wanted to have a deck big enough to be able to really read and look at and tell all the small little details. And you can imagine that when, you know, the latest edition, I think is the 7th edition, which I also have, and it's a smaller one. And obviously when it's a smaller one, you still have to contain all the major elements in a smaller card, so you have less real estate. And when you have bigger one, it's like having a bigger house. So the Emperor card is the reason why I love this deck so much. Although there's a few cards that actually make me love this deck, but this is by far my favorite Emperor card of all of my decks. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it really gives you that idea of it. To me, this almost looks as if we were looking at it from the bottom of the sea. And it reminds me of Pirates of the Caribbean movies, because there's so many images in which there's skeletons and, you know, at the bottom of the sea, and they're holding on to their empire, they're holding on to their sword, they're holding on to their, I don't know, gold, I'm expecting, or, you know, the symbols that represent their authority over their realm. But it's a skeleton. So on the one hand, it shows you at the same time the upright meaning of the Emperor card. So the domain, that authority, that charisma, that you can definitely feel emanating from the card. But at the same time, it also shows you the reversed meaning of the card, with the fact that, you know, it turned almost into a kind of a stagnation because of the realm not having changed in so long that the person, the emperor itself, is now a skeleton. So it tells you about, it tells you a tale of past glory rather than present glory, if it makes sense. And that is one of the risks of the Emperor card, because, well, also the Emperor card is number 4 in the major arcana. And the 4 always carries with it, from a numerological point of view, that possibility to transition from consolidation, which is a good thing, into stagnation, which is a bad thing. So, closing the parentheses on this, how beautiful is this deck? And this to me is the kind of spring deck that helps you go into summer. It's a deck that definitely still has the spring vibes. I would say still has perhaps 80% of spring vibes, but it really does not have any kind of winter vibe, and it's definitely taking you towards summer. Now, as you probably know, there are different versions of the Jonasa Jaus Tarot. This is the Jumbo edition, so not only the size, let's say, but also the shape of the deck has changed throughout the editions, and also the colors have changed. So I'm thinking, for example, about the 5th edition, in which, you know, we have like almost an oracle shape and size, and we have all of the greens turned into a much colder kind of tone green. There's no purple, for example, in that edition, or if there is, it's not the primary color like it is in many of these cards. So obviously, depending on the edition, you will have different vibes coming from the deck, and it also is possible that where this deck for me is the spring going into summer kind of deck, other editions might be the opposite, which is absolutely fine. By the way, finally, I'm happy to say that Jonasa has confirmed on her Instagram account that we can reach out to her for the guidebook for the Jonasa Jaus through the email. Now, because I haven't done it yet, I cannot speak in first person on how easy or difficult it is to obtain the PDF guidebook. But I can confirm that she did announce that on her Instagram page perhaps a month ago or something like that. I can't recall. So it is available. You have to reach out to her. Even perhaps you have to reach out to her on Instagram. As I said, I cannot confirm 100% because I haven't done it myself yet. What I can confirm is only the fact that it is available now. And I kind of urge you to reach out to her, you know, either way, to get it, because, and I'm going to do it for sure whenever I find a little bit of time, because I'm really looking forward to read what she says about the cards. There's 2 versions. I think there's one in Spanish and one in English as well. So this is the Jonasa Jaus, and it's the Jumbo edition. The next deck that I want to show you, rest assured it's a legit deck, it's not a fake one. It's by the Total Tarot Magazine production, let's say. It has been officially and legally licensed by Los Carabeo to Total Tarot Magazine in order for them to distribute, you know, these decks together with their issues. This is, well, in Australia we're a bit behind, because I think the UK is already in their 30s, their issue number 30 or something. In here we're definitely not. We're months behind. So this one just came probably a month ago, completed a month ago. It's the Fairy Tarot. So the reason why it's here is because I asked myself, what is a deck that truly represents the kind of feel you have when you change season towards the warmer months, but you're still very playful, as in, okay, let me explain. A 40-degree summer is not playful to me, okay? When it's 40 degrees, I feel like literally making as little movements as possible because I don't want to sweat. And generally speaking, I don't like to use air conditioning because of my sinuses and also, well, for many reasons. And so the fact that we used to have 40 degrees days here in Sydney in summer, it means that you're kind of limited in your enjoyment of the season. So you either feel like you're always wanting to jump in the sea and take a swim, or you're just stranded on the couch not moving. And whenever one of your cats or your husband gets near, you're like always like, no, don't get near me, because otherwise, you know, especially my cats, because they have long hair. They are part, well, they have a bit of everything in their blood, but there's a little bit of Maine Coon in both of them. So if you don't know that, that breed, Maine Coons are actually quite warm because they have really, really long hair. So the fairy tarot, it's so playful that to me it's still that kind of playfulness that still represents summer. And if you live in the Northern Hemisphere, to me represents the month of May. And there's also another reason. So fairy to me is always associated with the chasing, the hunt for the fireflies. So in May in Italy, in the northern parts of Italy, I used to, when I was a kid, we used to organize these hunts, you know, for fireflies. There were fireflies everywhere. It was amazing. It was magical, really, really magical. And we believed that there were fairies. And so that's always etched in my memory as something really beautiful that is associated with that kind of weather, that May weather, which is not too hot already, but it's still definitely got that kind of summer feel to it. I don't know whether there's still fireflies in Italy anymore. I haven't seen them in a while. I have seen plenty in Thailand, for example. There's a place close to, let me show you the cards because otherwise I only talk. So there's a place called Ampawa, which is a really one-day tour from Bangkok, which is really full of fireflies in the evening. It's just incredible. They take you down the river with a traditional boat, the long-tailed boat, and you go very still, very, very quiet, and you approach along the side of the river. There's these trees where the fireflies actually congregate, and it looks amazing. You have these kind of hundreds and thousands, almost feel like, of tiny little lights. It's very difficult to capture that on camera, unfortunately, because the lights are very, very tiny, as you can imagine, and it's because it is dark at nighttime. You don't have enough light. But that kind of feel, I think it's one of the reasons why I travel, because of that experience. This deck reminds me of that. It is, as you can see, it is kind of peepish in the sense that you've got the upper part of the card is definitely peeps, but the lower part is actually illustrated. And it is in theme with the meaning of the card. I really like it. It's quirky, it's interesting, it's, you know, almost as if it were so playful that it's actually kind of winking at you. Many of these cards are very cheeky, as you can see, because it is in the spirit of fairies to be cheeky, or at least this kind of fairy. Of course, we're not talking about Brian Froud's kind of fairies. But there is always, even the most serious kind of fairies might have that kind of playfulness to them. And that makes it for, in my case, I believe that it makes it for a very good deck to represent that kind of, as I said before, transaction between, you know, seasons. So it's spring going into summer. It definitely had that kind of summer feel to it, but it's very playful and it's not too overwhelmingly summery yet. So this is the Fairy Tarot. And now we're definitely into summer season. So the first deck of the summery kind of decks that I wanted to show you today is the Green Glyph Tarot, because this deck to me feels like summer, but it's still not the 40 degrees yet summer. So it's the kind of summer you can still enjoy. It's not the May feel of the Northern Hemisphere kind of summer anymore, because it's definitely warmer. But it's not July yet. It's a kind of June that you actually really enjoy. And again, this tarot, let me just zoom in because it's actually kind of small. So this tarot, I'm just going to show it by itself because I don't want anything to steal the thunder of this deck. It is just so incredibly beautiful. I love everything about it. I love the color palette, which is actually kind of limited. It's not necessarily muted because there are kind of vibrant colors, but there's not many colors that are utilized. I love the fact that you got elephants in the suit of cups. How beautiful is that? And I really love the fact that there is a symbology that on the one hand is still quite simple, as you can tell from the Chariot card, for example, but it's also elaborate at the same time because this is the Seven of Cups. And you can tell how there is the thought process behind the choice of the elements on the card, the Judgment card, for example, or the Four of Wands. Each and every card of these really conveys the meaning of the card. Five of Stones, it's really, really powerful, isn't it? So I really feel like there is this kind of summer feel to it already. It's not the oppressive kind of summer yet. It's the kind of summer that you still really enjoy, although you know that you kind of have those days in which you know that it's going to be really hot. It's going to come. It's going to be there. And, you know, you have to prepare yourself. So you make sure that you have, you know, clean your, for example, if you're using a fan, you make sure that it's clean, that it's ready, that there's no problem with the mechanism. Because if you find yourself in one of those nights in which it's, you know, 32 degrees at night and the fan doesn't work, then you're in trouble. So it's that kind of feel, you know, that comes out of the cards in this deck. And I love this Hermit card. It's absolutely beautiful because it reminds me of a Japanese garden with this bridge, you know, and the blossoming tree at the background there. It is, there's no two ways around that. James R. Eads' artwork is fantastic, whether you like his decks or not. It is to be recognized that there is so much skill going on in the production of these decks. Look at the Four of Cups. Isn't it beautiful? I really, really love this deck. So this is the Green Glyph Tarot, and we are definitely in summer territory because the next deck is actually going to be my most summer-like kind of deck, and it's a very recent acquisition, and it's a Marine from the Waves of Your Soul made me do it. It is the Zig's Arcana, but let me just zoom out just a little bit. So this deck is amazing. This is, to me, representing summer so much because of, well, first of all, we have a look at the backs. Hot pink. The gilding is also the same kind of really nice kind of hot pink as well. And the cards, I mean, it's not just a combination of colors that really reminds me of summer. It's also the quirkiness of many of the elements, many of the creatures present in the cards, the concept that is actually expressed by the cards themselves. I love that the salamander's tail is, you know, like an earring for this person. There's a lot of symbology here that requires you to kind of do a deep dive into this deck, because you cannot necessarily, you can use it even without knowing necessarily everything about it. There is a guidebook that comes with the deck. It's a good guidebook. It's not one of my favorite ones. I actually recently posted a video about some of my favorite Tarot and Oracle guidebooks, and this one didn't make the cut simply because there's so many others that I enjoy more. But it is a really beautiful one. It's a very useful one as well, because admittedly many of the symbols here, many of the reasons why there is a certain choice, you know, on the colors, for example, or the image to represent a certain meaning, you can actually find it in the book, and you kind of need to know that, even though as I said before, you can read it by reading the meaning of the traditional RWS. But why do it that? I mean, if we go as far as to buy a deck that is actually breaking up from the traditional symbology, we might as well know what the intention of the author is. Otherwise, if we just want to read any deck as if it were an RWS, we wouldn't need anything other than an RWS. Does that make sense? Of course, you appreciate the artwork, and of course you appreciate the way in which the cards appeal to you. In my case, the tactile feel is also very important, as I always say, and this is one of my favorite cardstock because it is that kind of papery. Very beautiful. It slides like a charm. The colors, for example, some people may be attracted by the colors of this deck. So it's, if you, as I said before, if you spend the extra money for an indie deck, for example, read the guidebook, because you might want to know why there was a certain choice that has been made in a symbol rather than another. I will never, you know, I'll never stop saying that. It's really, it's a very important concept for me. And because I keep on seeing people, even on TarotTube, for example, I just love this. Sorry, I had to stop and say, if you know, you know. Okay, these, what I remember, I was too little, but what I remember was the fact that I used to probably hold them by their hair, and I used to shake them like that. And I don't know, they made it such that the hair was very brittle, and it's just yeah, it's such a great way to show you the Six of Cups, because immediately it throws you back, you know, to that time in which you were not concerned by anything other as to shake this little doll by their hair. So what was I saying? Anyway, guidebooks, read them. So it's very nice. It's a very beautiful deck. One thing that I want to say is that I'm actually still looking for the perfect oracle deck to pair up with this. I think that so far I'm really liking it with the Vessel Oracle. If I've got the Vessel Oracle right here, I'm actually going to show you. Yes, I do. Let's have a look how they pair up together, but I'm still, like, I'm not 100% happy. And so if you're watching this and if you have the Zix Arcana Tarot and you can think of a better oracle to pair it with than the Vessel, then let me know in the comments below. I always appreciate any kind of recommendation, because I'm always searching, you know, for something that has, that, you know, has match made in heaven written all over it. So the I thought about the Vessel Oracle because of the backs as well. This is the same kind of pink, and the contrast between the pink and the blue that we see a lot in a lot of the cards. But then when it comes to the body of the oracle, you do have a lot of blank spaces. So that's the main reason why I'm not like 100% happy. It's still, I still believe that it works because the Vessel Oracle is really busy, as you can see. But I'm not necessarily sure that it's the perfect match. I'm pretty sure it's a pretty good match, but it's not the perfect match. Even though I can also tell you by reading the cards, the tarot cards, and having a look at the keywords on the oracle, that when it comes to the vibe, we're definitely in the same we're in the same planet here. We're not in two different galaxies. We're definitely in the same planet. Definitely close Ace of Wands. Grieve between the Ace of Wands and the Nine of Pentacles. Okay, why do we have to grieve? Perhaps sometimes even, you know, when there's a victory, when there's something going in the right direction, there's something that we need to lose, we need to leave behind in order to embrace something new. Or in this case, I may also choose to read the Nine of Pentacles as a reversed card, because the focus of this reading is on the keyword grieve. Grieve to me brings about the concept of something that is not necessarily positive, like, you know, how the way in which you would read a Nine of Pentacles when it comes upright. But if this was reversed, so visually if it were like this, you would definitely grieve a loss, wouldn't you? Now, when you start a new project and it went wrong and you grieve it. Now, I've talked about how to read reversals in a video. So if you're curious on about my practice, how I read reversals, I highly encourage you to watch it, not because it's my video, but because I believe that there's a lot of debates around in the tarot community whether you're a real tarot reader or not when you don't read reversals. I personally don't read reversals in the sense that I don't shuffle the decks in such a way to have reversals. So I don't, how should I put it? I don't seek reversals, but I do read them when the position on the spread requires, like in this case, to read the card more attuned to the reversed energy of the cards rather than the upright energies of the card. And as such, you need to be able to know for all the 78 cards what the reversed meaning is, even though you don't always read reversals. In any case, if you want, I'll link the video, because I believe it's there's some interesting ways that I didn't make up. I just learned, along the way. And there's some really interesting ways to read reversals that are not necessarily written in a book, but they are part of experience that comes after reading for so many years. What do you think about this pairing? As I said before, this is my go-to summer deck now, now that I've got it, because of the tones, but because of the quirkiness of it, of course. And I really want to find a really good match for the Six Arcana. So if you have the Six Arcana, or if by looking at this deck on my video, something comes to mind for a pairing, let me know, because I'll be very, very interested. I want to show you all of the decks that, in my opinion, help you move from one season to the next, with retaining whatever you learned and the experiences that you learned in the past season. So in the Southern Hemisphere, we're just going out of winter and moving into spring and summer with an open mind for new experiences to come. I don't want to close on anxiety, so there you go. We got birth between the King of Wands and the Five of Wands, which is a very fiery kind of birth. In this case, it's probably an Aries person. So thank you so much for staying with me till the end of this video. Please hit the like button if you liked it, and subscribe if you haven't already. It really means the world to me. Also, I always appreciate all of your comments. I always pledge to make this a safe space for everyone to share their experience, because for example, when I shared a lot of personal stuff, I got a lot of people reaching out to me and sharing the same experience. So it is my responsibility to keep it a safe space, and I take it very, very seriously. So thanks so much when you want to comment. I always appreciate that. More to come. Have a great day.